All right, Nick, let's talk about the New Orleans Saints. The Saints, obviously, new head coach Kellen Moore. He's got to select his guys that are going to help him bring this team back up to prominence. And we're talking about the defensive side of the ball. There's an interesting trend in the head coaches selected for the interview process. I think it's going to be something very exciting for Saints fans. But before we get to that, I'm Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. And Nick, as I alluded to, something very interesting is going on when you look at the trend of the defensive coordinator candidates for the New Orleans Saints. Let's get into the article. We talk more about it on the other side. This is from Saints Wire. It says all of the New Orleans Saints reported candidates for defensive coordinator have experience running a 3-4 base defense. That signals change is coming for the Saints, whether it's Brandon Staley, Durante Jones, or Christian Parker on the headset. The Saints have traditionally worked out of a 4-3 base for more than a decade, dating back to Dennis Allen's takeover as the defensive coordinator. The most common personnel package these days are nickel and dime defenses. If that was the case during Staley's 2020 LA Rams defense as well, and each of his Chargers defenses run a first NFL offensive have made somewhat of a resurgence, but teams are still pass happy, and defenses account for it by overwhelmingly working out of nickel packages. This shows Saints really thinking proactively, thinking, what are they going to do to deal with these modern day NFL offenses. Think this 3-4 base idea is very intriguing. I'm curious what your thoughts are, Nick. But before we get to you, Saints fans, in the comment section below, what do you think about this? Do you think going to a 3-4 base is not something that you've been used to? Over a decade, you've seen a 4-3 defense, and it's a little bit more traditional, but the 3-4, it could be something that is advantageous going forward. Let us know your thoughts on this potential strategy switch up in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what do you think about this potential move for the Saints?
I think it's the perfect hire, and it's one of the reasons you bring in a guy like Kellen Moore to be your head coach, to think differently. I know it's kind of stereotypical, right? You have a young head coach, you expect him to be a little bit innovative, a little bit forward thinking, but really what you're hoping for is someone who's not stuck in his ways, a guy who's willing to change the way you do things, which the Saints obviously need. And I love the idea of a 3-4 defense being your primary structure, because if you look at going into 2024, roughly 6 teams had the 3-4 as their primary defense. It's obviously in the minority. You take the old Bill Belichick Patriots adage, you want to do things a little differently than everybody else. The Patriots would have a left-footed punter and things like that, just to give opposing offenses, in this case, a unique experience when they game plan and then eventually play you. And there's a zig and zag element in the NFL, right? Teams go into heavy, aggressive downfield passing. Defenses switch to 2 deep, cover 2 kind of safeties. Teams switch to sort of intermediate routes to counter that. Teams switch to cover 3, cover 4 defenses, right? And then teams go to running the football. Now it's time to switch to a 3-4 defense to get after and stopping the run with big, strong nose tackles, and then elaborate pass rushes, elaborate blitzes to blow up those play action passes as team like to do off the running game. This is just what happens in the NFL, and the Saints, to their credit, are getting ahead of the trend. We just saw the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles win the title by running the football. They were a primarily running team. Even though teams like the Rams have won a title, the 49ers have been really good. They were a heavy running team. The reality was a lot of people looked at Matthew Stafford, they looked at the Brock Purdy, Debo Samuel, George Kittle 49er side and said, okay, those are primarily aggressive passing attacks that can run the football. Now we're seeing a team in Philadelphia that literally we're just going to run the ball right at you, sometimes with our running back, sometimes with our quarterback, but we're going to play old school power football. We're going to see a seismic shift now among other NFL offenses. And we've already seen a lot this offseason. The Dallas Cowboys hiring a heavy running offensive coordinator to be their head coach. Heck, even the Saints hiring Kellen Moore was the offensive coordinator for that Eagles team. We're going to see a lot of teams invest heavily in running backs, switching the trend the way it was a few years ago. We're going to see a lot of teams switching their offensive strategies to run the football. That means defensively, you need to be prepared to counter. And the Saints, with this hire, potential hire, whichever direction they go, going with a 3-4 to lead their defense will allow them to be proactive instead of reactive. And it's a smart strategy.
Yeah, Nick, when we look at the personnel for the Saints, I think going forward, it would be kind of beneficial for the Saints to make this switch. They're missing the traditional, like, big bodied upfront nose tackle. But if you kick guys like Cam Jordan or Brian Brzee out to the sides, traditionally smaller guys, both under 300 pounds, for defensive interior guys on this Saints team, they're more suited to be like outside, bigger bodied edge rusher type of guys than your traditional interior defensive linemen. So the Saints kick their two best guys to the outside and then go into the draft and find a bigger body guy to place inside. I think it really could help them out as well. It deciding whether they have Chase Young for the long haul, that could be a guy to be, that traditional outside linebacker type of position. They're set up better than you would imagine, I think, for this type of move. So Saints fans, don't be too worried about the personnel shift. I think if you do it, you're really only looking at one guy you need to find. That's your big body, interior, traditional nose tackle, head up type of guy in the middle. And I don't think those are too hard to find. You can find a lot of really big guys in the draft. Just go look at whoever Georgia has on their defensive line. You'd probably be okay. But I think overall, good move by the Saints. Very, like you said, outside the box thinking by Kellen Moore, feeling another great hire for the Saints.